All right, welcome back, Prospect Live viewers and listeners. This is the 2021 MLB Draft Show. I am Ralph Lifshitz, your host, and of course, joining me, Joe Doyle, the man that broke the cancellation of the MILB season a very long time ago. But we won't get into that now, will we, JJ? Anyway, all right, we got a really big show this week. And when I say really big, I mean huge. We have our first interview on the podcast. It's going to be a series of interviews. And we're kicking it off in style with probably the top performer, or at least one of the top performers from 2020 PG National. That is catcher Ian Moller. Ian's going to join us in just a minute. Joe, I'm super excited to have Ian on the show. I thought one of the more standout defensive players and offensive players at the National Showcase. This is a guy to watch over the next year. And I think in a lot of ways was sort of a coming out party because he showed that bat, not just in batting practice, he showed it in game and made some loud contact, dropped the ball in for some hits, also had some outs that were really, really loud off the bat. But I know talking to a few evaluators, they had questions about the in-game performance. They left saying this kid's the real deal.
Yeah, I mean, he was already a top 12, top 13 guy in our rankings before, before the PG National Showcase. And like we mentioned on last week's podcast, he didn't do anything to dissuade me from moving him up on our boards. The swing is comfortable. It's simple. It's very, very clean. He's got easy in-game power, which you don't see a lot of players at this age tap into. And he's really comfortable behind the plate. He moved up in our rankings. I get the feeling he might end up moving up even more as the summer moves on. And for me, he is in the conversation with Brady House as the most complete hitter in this class right now.
Yeah, it's hard to argue that based upon what the performances is. Obviously time for a really talented prep group there at the top to, separate themselves within those tiers. But there's a lot of talent, and Moller is certainly one of those guys. But let's not get too long-winded here. The fans are here to listen to Ian speak. So let's jump into the interview, Joe. What do you say?
Let's do it.
Joining us live on the show is one of the standouts from the 2020 PG National event. Took place a couple weeks ago. We talked about it extensively on the show, covered him as well, Mr. Ian Moller. Ian, thank you for joining Joe and I here on the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
So, Joe, why don't you jump right in? I know you got a handful of questions you want to throw Ian's way, and I'll chip in with what I got, but I'll let you go. You're a rabid dog, man.
Yeah, man, Ian, we were really impressed with your performance at PG National. You really stood out for a lot of reasons, but from your point of view, how satisfied were you with that performance? And the second follow-up to that is, what sort of things were you doing to stay sharp leading up to that showcase?
I always try to look at positive in events. During the week, the week that I'm playing, I try to stay positive just to not get too down on myself. But after the event's over, that's kind of when I try to get more hard on myself. During the week, I'd say I was pretty positive and satisfied just because, I didn't want to get too down. That's when I started playing bad. But coming back on the weekend, I know there's a lot of video and stuff. So, I was critiquing a lot of video. Just a lot of things I can work on, my other at-bats that I got out. But something I just stay sharp. I was hitting every day with my dad, trying to stay in shape, just doing a lot of little things, little stuff, just stay sharp. So, just staying consistent in my work ethic, just hitting every day and catching things like that.
Go ahead, Ralph. When you're ready.
Were there sort of any areas of focus that you sort of, really dug in on over the course of this shutdown? We know you're a standout defender. The hitting really came along, I felt. We had some articles sort of breaking down, your bat angle and some of those things and how you really optimize for power. Did you spend more time, in the cage hitting with your father? Was there anything in particular you're working on, whether it be, setup, hands, sort of just timing, anything like that?
I was still spending the same time that I was before. I'm in the cage for about 2-3 hours every day. But honestly, it was just being athletic and just being comfortable in there. My dad's the type of person, he sends my swing out to a lot of people and people critiquing and things like that. And I wouldn't say confusing because I understood what they were saying, but really the best thing for me was just stay comfortable. I mean, last summer, I didn't hit the best that I thought I could. I wasn't the most comfortable. I was trying to focus on, everything people were saying, trying to get like the picture perfect swing. But during the quarantine and things like that, and during the showcase, I was just focused on being athletic in the box and not overthinking, just getting up there and, just like I was a little kid playing in the backyard, just swinging and having fun out there. I wasn't trying to overthink or think about, my back foot, where my hands are. I was just trying to be athletic in there and just swing, honestly. I have a focus in there. I'm just trying to stay in. I think if anything, just kind of have fun and stay athletic in there and just swing, just play baseball.
Good stuff.
Yeah, your swing. Comfort is definitely it's palpable with you in the box. You look comfortable, you look quiet, it's compact. Frankly, it's a really advanced approach for someone your age, and that really stood out. But speaking of standing out, in terms of the entire showcase as a whole, what stood out for you? Was it being in front of that many scouts? Was it the amount of players that were there? What kind of sticks out from your experience as a whole?
They're just having the best players there. That's what I love. I don't really like killing, weak pitching, mediocre pitching. I just love playing the best. I feel like I rise to the occasion, and I feel like that's where the best players really come out, and that's where the dogging people come out. So just being there with the best players and scouts, kind of just roll the balls out and let's play. So that's just what I love to do. So that's what stood out the most to me.
Well, as a catcher, I got to ask you this question: who was the most impressive pitcher that you caught, or even the most impressive pitch? I'm interested to hear about some of that inside stuff. Obviously, only you could tell us.
I'll still say Christian Little. I've never caught Christian before. That was my first time catching him, or I caught him one inning in some showcase event, but that was a year ago. That was my first time really catching him, and catching at those things are kind of difficult because you don't really know the pitcher, so you kind of just quick bullpen session, and you kind of just out there, and he's trying to give it his all because it's only 2 innings. But Christian, he's good. Fastball, cuts, and he's a big dude, so it's really coming at you. And
yeah,
slider, curveball, changeup, everything's hard and it moves a lot. So I'll say him still. I was probably the most difficult person to catch, but I was still comfortable back there. It's just difficult because he's really got really good stuff.
Legit, absolutely.
All right, so I'm going to flip it on its head a little bit. So when you're at the plate, when you're batting, what's the toughest pitch that you saw that you had to lay off or tried to get a piece of? And then I guess the other piece of that offensive part is, was there another dude at PG Showcase that really showed out to you that just kind of had a different juice about him, showed off as kind of one of the elite guys that you were impressed with?
To answer the first part, I think I forgot who it was, but I think somebody threw me a fastball and I fouled it off right back. I was really on, I think like 91, 92. And I think he come back with a changeup. It might be my second at bat the first night, the night game. I think he threw me a changeup that I was out in front of. I think I hit it to right field. That was a really good pitch. That was probably the best pitch I faced just because it looked just like his fastball and I was on it. And
must be a good feeling.
Yeah. Hitting. I didn't really feel like nobody that I faced was that good. It really fooled me like that much. That was that disgusting. I saw a lot of videos of a lot of different players though. I saw Chase Burns throwing like 90-mile-an-hour sliders and changeups and things like that. And my boy Cale Langsfield, he did really good too.
Yeah.
I saw some of his stuff and some of the videos, and so nobody really that I faced I thought was like that disgusting, but I thought a lot of the people I saw videos of or some of the pictures on my team were really good.
Well, you mentioned your boy Cale. Is he somebody you've grown close to throughout this process? Are there any other players throughout the showcase circuit? We know you guys are obviously in close proximity, facing each other for years leading up to this. Is there anyone you've kind of built a tight relationship with, someone you call your boy?
Yeah. Well, first of all, Kale, yeah, I met him last week. We played on Team Elite together, and I never met him before, never knew him, but he's really easy to make friends with. He talks. I caught him actually. He was nasty, and you can tell he's a dog on the mound too. So I love pitchers like that. But yeah, I kind of got a nice friend group through travel ball that we played through the years. A lot of the kids on the MLB Breakthrough team, like Tyree Reed, Irv, Carter, Dylan, Danny, Chris Moore, Chris Little. We're in contact every day. We play video games together, things like that. But yeah, we talk almost daily. We got little group chat things, and it's always with them and us pushing each other too. So those couple guys are probably just the closest I've grown to just over the years playing against each other.
Nice. Ian, I think I got an easy one for you. So what's your biggest strength on the field? But then on the flip side again, what's the one thing that you're really working to improve over this next summer circuit?
This summer, I think the most thing for me two things for working on is stay comfortable at the plate, never stay balanced, things like that. And then catching is just be as comfortable as I am catching, hitting, and just try to stay comfortable in both. Sometimes I have a tendency to, especially pitches I never caught before, I can like jump at the ball, something, because I don't want no pass ball at a showcase event, things like that. So I feel like sometimes I can get a little jumpy at the ball. And then what was the other part of the question?
The other part would be, you kind of answered it. So what would your strengths be on the field, and then what would your weaknesses be on the field? But it sounds like the biggest thing for you is just comfort as a whole.
Yeah. I think the strength is me. A lot of people have power and like batting person like that. I think I show a lot of power in games as well, not just batting practice. So I think that's a big strength for me. I have a lot of power now, but I think I can grow into a lot more power as well. And the other thing, like I said, I just catching and things like that.
I want to ask: is there a catcher at the big league level that you model yourself after?
There's a couple.
Maybe pick up parts of his game. Yeah,
there's a couple of pick up parts. First of all, I love the energy that Wilson Contreras brings behind the plate. I feel like he's always energized, and that's the type of guy I love. If I was a pitcher, that's the type of guy I want. He's gonna fight for you. And catching wise, I love Yadi and Salvador Perez. I love watching those guys just defensively, and just I like the way they control the game. Obviously, they're great defensively, but the leadership is what really stands out for me. Those guys consider who I highlights of, or if they on TV, I always try to watch them.
Nice. I'm gonna change course a little bit here, and I'm gonna put you on the spot. Are there any funny stories that you had from PG National? Any goofs or pranks or anything with any of the other guys? Don't get anyone in trouble now.
I have to do. The first game, I think his name's Kenya Huggins. He's on the white team.
Oh yeah.
He's a pitcher, but he tries to hit. I don't know why, but he tries to hit. And, we always talk. You might have saw during the game. We always talking from each other while I'm catching, and he's on the sideline or whatever. And he told me I wasn't gonna throw nobody out. And then the next dude walked, so somebody got put on first base. I threw the guy out, and then he came up to bat the next inning. And I always talked about how he's not a hitter. And he saw the first fastball and swung at it. He was way late. And I was telling him, like, oh, here comes another one. I threw a breaking ball on him. He swung and missed on that. And then I caught another fastball. I told him the breaking ball coming again. And he threw a fastball right by him and struck him out. So
3 pitches?
Yeah, 3 pitches. Or 3 or 4, something like that. But he wasn't close to any of them. But that's my boy. But yeah, that was probably the funniest thing, just because we always talk trash to each other. It's just fun. That's probably the best thing.
It's always one of the better parts of the showcase where you have like 3 elite hitters in a row, and then some guy gets up there. It's like a 6'4" pitcher that like has like a really baseline. So he's completely like, upright in the box and like not athletic at all. And the lower half isn't in sync. It always makes for a couple good laughs. So I'm glad that you guys see that too. I'm going to go back on to sort of the baseball stuff. I got a question sort of focused on, your generation in terms of training, all the information that's available to you, all the tech that's available to you at a really young age, stuff that, somebody like me who's pushing 40 didn't have anything like that. I mean, I was lucky if I got my on-base percentage in high school. So is there any sort of tech, anything that you're working with that you feel has made a big difference, or just really anything you've tried out over the last couple of years?
Me and my dad was gotten into that. We use blast motion from time to time just to. I know that's what they and that kind of stuff what they use at showcases. But when I was a little younger, probably like a couple years ago, we used it a lot more. But I don't want to say it messed up my swing, but I think we was looking so much to improve the numbers that the swing kind of got off, and I think that's the part where people overcomplicate hitting is using all that stuff. So we try not to use it that much, really. We more base it on just mechanics and swing. I think if you got those, the numbers will play for themselves. But we just try to focus on the swing. We take a lot of video and work with kind of a lot of old school stuff. Like I swing a lot of just poles, just regular metal poles, heavy bats, things like that. So I mean, no, I don't really use it though. It's too complicated sometimes for people. I think it just messes people up a lot.
Yeah, I think it's different for a hitter than it necessarily is for a pitcher in terms of, the movement profile and some of those things, right? But Joe, do you have anything else you wanted to send over Ian's way?
Yeah, I got a couple more. You're highly regarded in prospect circles right now. Everyone's kind of got you penciled in as one of the better guys in this 2021 draft. Do you have any specific goals set for yourself for the next calendar year that you're looking to achieve, or maybe a level that you're trying to reach before next June?
I wouldn't necessarily say goals. I don't really like to play specific goals on myself because I feel like sometimes I might just limit you or get you satisfied if you reach it. But me, it's just every time I go to practice, every time I go to a game, it's just to go out there and kill and give 100%. So I wouldn't necessarily say I got like specific goals. It's just every time I'm out on the field, my goal is to be the best player on the field and show that I'm the best player in the country. That's just my main goal every time I get out there is to kill.
One more baseball question for you. Are there any things when you're watching other catchers that are out there, could be professional, could be guys that you're playing against? What's the first thing, as a catcher that you notice either good or bad about a guy's game that you sort of hone in on when he's back there behind the plate? It might be, how he receives, whatever. I'm always interested to hear the sort of things that a guy like you notices versus maybe somebody like myself.
Same thing. It's just comfort. You can kind of tell the guys who've been working, who's not. Even a guy might have a couple pass balls here and there or something like that, but you can always tell guys who are comfortable and confident in themselves. So, and they kind of that swagger about them behind the plate. So, it's probably just how confident, just how smooth the catcher looks, just from the eye is just what I see first.
All right, man. We got some firework questions here for you. Now, these are not going to be baseball related, but they might be a lot more difficult. This first one comes from our good friend Eddie. He's a contributor, a writer, staff over here at Prospects Live, and he's got a good one. He's from Florida, and his question is: would you rather live in a world where every single song is sung by Pitbull, or where only one song exists, but every single artist gives their own rendition of it?
One song where every artist has got a little version.
How about this? I'll give you this. How about Africa by Toto? Every single artist sings it, or Pitbull does every song?
I think I might lean Pitbull on that one.
I'm telling you, dude.
Just so I could hear beats once in a while, I think I might have to move on to Pitbull.
Yeah, you gotta be the second. I'm not into Pitbull at all. So
What you got, Ralph?
I don't think I have anything after that. I was going to ask him just about, sort of final question. What drew him to LSU? Besides probably tons of beautiful women on campus, but what was it about LSU that sold you?
I mean, it's always kind of been a dream school. I got a lot of family down there, but I mean, I always tell people that ask me what else is like. I always just tell them, like, if you take a visit down there, it's really hard not to commit there. I mean, especially go to baseball or football game or anything where you can see the fans and how crazy and diehard they are for really any sports program down there. It's really hard not to, and just the campus and how everybody kind of just draws to. I mean, just LSU. Probably the main thing. This is what made me fall in love with LSU. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, it's one of the best college baseball environments, and I don't think that's even probably up for debate. Handful 2, 3, 4 in the country, and they pack that place out, and there's a ton of passion as well. So I totally understand why you do that. Joe, anything that you wanted to ask Ian before we let him go, let him get back to training?
Not really, man. Like I said, to kick this whole thing off, you've definitely really made a loud entrance into the 2021 cycle. We're really excited to keep watching you this summer. We're obviously rooting for you, and good luck the rest of the way.
All right.
Yeah, Ian, thanks for joining us. Congratulations on the strong performance, and keep killing them, man. Can't wait till you go top 5 next year, right?
Yeah, thank you guys so much.
All right, big thank you to Ian for joining us here on the podcast. It was our first interview. We're going to be rolling out a few in the coming weeks. Benny Montgomery, I believe, is up next week. Thanks very much to Joe for lining that up. Great insight there. And I felt like I came away learning quite a bit about sort of the PG National experience. And Ian is a great, as a kid, great player, even better kid. All right, let's jump into sort of the college draft. I know we said we were going to be looking at the college side of things this week. So without further ado, let's sort of jump into the position by position breakdown because we don't have to go crazy into the ranks. We have the ranks out here. Things are certainly going to be changing. We probably have less information to go off of with some of these college guys, but let's jump into catchers and sort of infielders within that group. We do have some standouts, particularly at the catching position at the top of the draft, that being Adrian Del Castillo. I know some people think that Matt McClain is a top 10 prospect. I'm not one of them, having seen him quite a bit. I do think he's a really talented player. So he's one of those guys that is in the conversation. Maybe Jose Torres from an NC State. Certainly the Cal State Fullerton catcher that I saw last year. I'm going to butcher his name. Gongaran.
Yeah. You're close. I'm sure you're close.
And then Hayden Jones from Illinois State, a Redbird. We know they have a long track record of turning catchers into something else at the big league level, whether it be shortstops, Gold Glove shortstops at that, Paul DeJong being one. Anyone you wanted to sort of jump in here and sort of piggyback on, this part of the class is certainly a little bit more shallow than the outfielders, some of the pitching.
Yeah, I'd say from a catcher perspective, we've already hit on Del Castillo quite a bit, and chances are he's not going to be a catcher at the next level. So, the conversation in that regard is a little moot. I think in terms of who the top college catcher that's going to come off the board, for me, there's 2 guys that stick out, and the first one is Hunter Goodman at Memphis. He's kind of your prototypical big league catcher at this point. He's got big power, and but there's a lot of swing and miss in his profile. So whether or not he's going to be able to hit enough to be a regular at the big league level is kind of the biggest question mark. But he's a guy that may end up in a corner. He may end up behind the plate. He's got a good arm. Right now, I think we have him slotted in as like a late first, maybe a comp round A type of bat. So he's an interesting one for me. And then the other one who hasn't cracked our top 50 yet, but you just kind of get the feeling he will, is going to be the Louisville catcher, and Henry Davis. So Henry Davis is he's 6'2", 195. He's built like a prototypical catcher. He's very athletic for his size. Another guy that doesn't have as much power as Hunter Goodman, but he projects to stay behind the plate more comfortably than the Memphis catcher. So, yeah, college catchers, there's generally not a ton of them near the top of the draft, and you're going to have your Casey Opitz, and you're going to have your CJ Rodriguez, and there's quite a few other guys that are going to be selected next year. But as you know, technically, catchers generally don't go in waves or a ton of them near the top of the draft.
Yeah, and Goodman's the kind of guy that if he ended up left field, DH, certainly if we do get to the point with, I guess I want to call them data-driven catchers, or the catchers of the aftermath of the robo umpire.
Yeah,
I think he fits in there. I saw him last summer on the Cape. In a few in-games, saw him catch, saw him, I think, play some first base as well. And he was in the home run derby. And I mean, he's just a big right-handed masher, hits tons of lofty, barreled up sort of fly balls. So the power with Goodman is just, it's going to play regardless of sort of what position he's at. And he has the bat that he could fit into, more of a left field only sort of position, or, even first base only. And I think, if there's an outside chance that it's potentially a DH, especially when, consider there's going to be National League teams that are going to have the DH spot potentially available in 2022. I know they're going back in 2021 for whatever silly reason, but I would assume that it's probably going to be a part of the next CBA and one of those things where there's more jobs sort of going, to potential players. But getting back on track with the draft, another guy I wanted to bring up was Alex Benelis. From Louisville, a third baseman. I don't know. I haven't seen him enough defensively to really nitpick. He wasn't healthy at the beginning of this season. Certainly was a big part of their run last year in regionals, etc. The bat's there. I almost kind of look at him as a first baseman, though. I don't know if I'm wrong to do that.
No, you might be right. Yeah, he's a bulky kid. I'm with you. I have not watched enough, which is strange because you would have thought that we've watched enough Louisville at this point to have Benelis stand out. But it's just not the case. He's a beefier kid, big power. He plays the ball to all fields. He doesn't strike out, which is a great hit for a college, or a great trait for a college hitter, and generally goes a long way in transitioning to pro ball. So I couldn't give you a strong answer in either way, whether or not he's a pro third baseman, but he's, for third baseman in this draft, he's probably the best stick right now.
And what about a guy like Jose Torres from NC State? I know he's outside of our top 100 because we do have a board that's actually much deeper than the 50. We just haven't released all that yet to you good folks. What about Jose Torres? Because there are some folks that sort of look at him as a draft eligible sophomore, and we didn't see a ton of him this year. There's some evaluators that have him, with back end of the first round, early second round grades. I don't think I'm one of them, obviously based upon our rankings. But what are your general thoughts on Torres?
I like Torres. I need to see more of Torres because as a freshman, he started every game for NC State, which is a really big deal. But at 6 feet, 165, that's not a very big body to bet on in the first round. The stats don't lie. I mean, you're looking at a guy that hit or slugged 533. He's got 3 home runs his freshman year. He's able to put some juice in the ball, and he's a good defensive player. But I just wonder whether or not a guy with his stature is the type of player that you'd want to put first-round value on, especially in a year when, we've talked about it before, that there might be 5 prep shortstops that have first-round value. So I like Torres, but he really, really needs 2021 to showcase what type of a player he is. The small sample size is fantastic, but got to see more, which is unfortunately the narrative on so many of these college players.
It's true. And then there's a couple of, I'll say, smaller school the Wright State has obviously produced a ton of prospects recently, but smaller school middle infielders that are sort of interesting. One from an Ivy League school in Pennsylvania, that being Josh Hood, and then the other being Tyler Black, second baseman from Wright State.
So I've seen Hood. I haven't watched any of Black. I'm actually pretty high on Josh Hood. I think he could be a good player. I really like the build. 6'1", 100. He's like 190, 195. He's built really well. And all he's done is put up numbers. I mean, 331 as a freshman with 8 home runs. That's a big deal coming from the shortstop position. And he plays a reliable position, a reliable shortstop. I don't know if he's necessarily a shortstop at the next level. He may have to shift to second base or third base, but I do believe in the bat more than anything. Probably not a burner. He's not going to take too many bases for you, but another guy that just, he doesn't strike out. He draws his walks, and I think he's almost cut from the same cloth as Nick York, who I know is your boy now.
My boy.
But I do like Josh Hood. I can't speak on Tyler Black. I haven't seen enough of Wright State to make a fair assessment.
Yeah, well, he was a standout. When I caught a fair amount of Tyler Black, his freshman year with Wright State, decent team there. Obviously, Orr was in that team as well as Peyton Burdick. He mashed. I mean, slash 353, 469. Get the numbers in front of me. Of course, 600, 7 homers. He steals a little bit. Good all around player. He was the. I believe he was a freshman All-American as well, and might have been all conference. He's a Canadian kid. Stocky sort of build. Okay. He's definitely second base only long term. But I think he's one of those guys that can sort of carve out a good all around profile where, the glove is sturdy enough at second base, and, he could stick there and there's really no questions about it. And the bat's good enough to keep him at that position and kind of get him above that utility sort of threshold, which tends to be a question with a lot of these second base only guys, especially coming out of college. It's like we have enough guys that are sort of not good third baseman or shortstop that hit just as well as a guy like that we can move to second base, where I think, the profile offensively with Black, he has the power, he has enough speed. He's not a station-to-station player on the bases as well. Can't take an extra base for you. And the plate approach is decent. We haven't seen outside of a single year. And, obviously that was, in the Horizon Conference, which is a good mid-major, but still it's limited in terms of what the overall quality of competition is. But this is a guy that, walked at, I think, 15+% rate, under 10% strikeout rates. The strikeout rate went up a little bit this year, but he still held strong with that ability to get on base. And that's something that I'll tend to look at, especially when you're looking at guys that aren't, standout defensive players. And most of those guys, if we're really talking about the setting up the middle types, they tend to come more from the prep class. You're looking for those ready-made plug-and-play guys. And I think Black's going to be a really good player that some team gets in like the second round or something, and a little bit underrated. But yeah, that's good stuff. I wanted to talk about Hood. I wanted to talk about Black because there's some names that maybe aren't getting as much shine right now as they typically would have. They would have been guys that went down the Cape or to Northwoods and performed really well. And, unfortunately, we're probably going to miss a lot of that. Black wouldn't have been on the national team, by the way, because he is a Canadian kid. Anything else you want to say in the catchers and the infielders here? Do you want to move on to the outfielders or the arms?
So I got 2 guys for you on the infield that I want to hit on really quick. The first one is, I don't know how much Tennessee you've watched, but Max Ferguson, second baseman, really had a standout 2020 campaign, albeit, abbreviated. Got some first round buzz around his profile. He's a lefty. I like the hit tool, and he's definitely a second baseman. What are your thoughts? Have you seen much Max Ferguson, and what do you think of the profile?
Yeah, honestly, I caught a decent amount of Tennessee this year. He hit in every game that I watched because he had a tremendous season. But I mean, not enough that I have a great take on him. I probably would have to digging a little bit more just in terms of Tennessee games with an eye toward him as opposed to looking at some of the arms, whether it's Crochet or whoever.
Sure.
But I have a few games I can pull up afterward and dig in a little bit more. But he was certainly one of the standouts this year.
Yeah. One other guy, this might be a little bit closer to home for you. I know that you are involved with University of Virginia baseball, especially in terms of their arms. Third base, Zack Ghilaf. What do you think? Is he going to be in the conversation with Alex Manellis?
I don't know if he's going to be that high, but he was a guy I was going to bring up a little bit earlier. Good size, there's some power in the profile as well. He's the mid-Atlantic kid, sort of on that cold weather border coming out of Delaware. And he's shown pretty well. I mean, I don't know how much power there's going to be there long-term. He showed a lot more pop in a short sample size in 18 games this year, hitting 5 home runs between his freshman year and then his summer in Northwoods with Kalamazoo. He only hit 4. So there's certainly progression there. I mean, he was slashing 349, 469, 746 before the season ended.
How's that?
Yeah. I mean, the numbers are tremendous. He ran a little bit as a freshman. I don't think he's going to run so much as the body fills out. Like I said, he is a bigger guy at 6'3". But I think he's got a legitimate shot to stick at third base. The arm's pretty solid. The hands are pretty solid. I can't say that I got a ton of looks. He's another guy that was hoping to get some looks at down the Cape this summer. Didn't have the ability to do that. That's usually where I get my best sort of feeling and feel for a guy's feel defensively, how the arm plays, how he's taking balls off of bad high school infields for the entire summer with really rough dirt. So it's a good measuring test. It's a good barometer for guys like that. And unfortunately, I'm not going to get that with Ghilaf. But the bat played everything I've seen in UVA games. I thought Ghilaf was one of the standouts when I saw Virginia last year. He's definitely a guy for me that I think is going to be pushing for top 50 conversation, could push into the back end of the first round. But I view him more as like the 2020 Austin Wells sort of Daniel era. Maybe he pushes that Foscue button and gets a little bit higher, but I think we would probably say Foscue's still in that Austin Wells, Daniel Cabrera, Westberg tier that we saw sort of go in the back end of the first round and into the comp round. I think that's where Ghilaf probably ends up settling in.
So our conversation here really speaks volumes to the difficulty these guys are going to have with no cape, because you see all these guys that pop and they have the cape as kind of the backbone, the pillar of their foundation for their draft stock. If you're a guy like Ghilaf or like Max Ferguson, who really pops over 15 games and then maybe pops again over a short sample size in 2021, you're never going to have that foundation of but I also hit 330, 350 with a wooden bat against the best players in the country. You're just, it's going to be really interesting to see exactly how this shakes out in 2021. It's going to be, I know this sounds like an echo, but it's going to be like another draft that we've never experienced before, because these guys, a lot of these picks are going to be, some of them are going to be sight unseen.
Yeah, and I think you start to look, especially as we transition here in conversation to the outfield class. In a normal summer, there's only so many guys that could have made the national team. And, you got Fabian up there. You got guys like Colton Cowser, Ethan Wilson, Christian Franklin, Sal Frelick, who's a local guy who still hasn't been able to play in the Cape. And, a handful of others, whether it's a guy like Eric Kennedy or, Andrew Williams from UNLV. There's so many names that are out there in this sort of outfield class. Even a guy like Jacob Young from Florida or Porter Brown from TCU now that are coming to mind. Those guys would have ended up on the Cape. And, Fabian already had his Cape summer. There's a couple other guys there at the top, Wilson and, Franklin, et cetera, that probably go to the national team. Maybe there's 6 or 7, maybe even 8 guys that are there. Then there's this whole list of these guys that are going to go in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th round. There's even more players that weren't drafted this year that didn't sign for the 40K after the draft. And there's now a roster crunch. There's a crunch in terms of talent in the first 10 rounds from the college ranks, which is where those guys are going to draw their best bonuses. And it's a costly summer for them, just in terms of reps, but also in terms of the dollar value they're going to be able to pull back. And I'll give you an example because it's an interesting conversation. A guy like Nick Gonzalez, had he not gone down to Katuitt and sort of raked from end to end, from the beginning of the league until the end, he wouldn't have sort of been able to knock off the naysayers and the questions about how good is this guy really in terms of the bat? How is it going to play in an environment that's not like New Mexico State, versus that level of competition that New Mexico State faces? He wouldn't have been able to take that question head on and do what he did and push himself into the top 10 had it not been for the Cape Cod League. So I think that's, definitely going to be one of the murkier areas here. And as a guy who relies heavily on, fueling our Cape coverage and our college looks and sort of getting that holistic picture of one spring to the summer to the fall to the next spring and how these guys develop as players. Once they do hit their draft time, we lose all that. So it's going to be difficult, but it's not like MILB guys are ahead of him at this point. It almost seems like we're going to have 3 straight draft classes that are more or less coming into the MILB season together, it's kind of remarkable to think that Andrew Vaughn is almost a step behind these 2021 kids if they are healthy, if everything is good in terms of the the coronavirus situation and the pandemic here in the country. If we do get that under control to the point that we can have a full high school season from coast to coast, and the same thing with a full college season, it's going to be wild. I mean, these guys are essentially going to have 2 months, 3-4 months when you consider their post-draft period.
It's going to be a free for all.
The guys that were drafted 2 years after them. It's remarkable.
It's going to be this next spring is going to be a free for all. Let's say we have and I don't want to go like too far down the coronavirus rabbit hole here, but let's say we have a vaccine in the middle of February or late February next year, and all of a sudden things start opening up a little bit. People are a little bit more comfortable with holding events. It's going to be a battle royale for these guys trying to jockey for draft positions, because it's their shot. It's their audition. Jacob Young from Florida, he's one that really stood out for me because he absolutely tore the cover off the ball for Florida in 2020 in short, in a short sample size. And he needs to do it again because he was going to be a guy that if he went to the Cape and he absolutely blistered the ball again, you're talking about a guy that might be top 40, top 50. And now where would you put Jacob Young? I mean, 3rd round consideration right now, 4th round consideration. He's kind of like a Jesse Franklin from this year,
Yeah, I think you're right. And he's not going to have that opportunity to sort of show and prove and push his stock up any further than it is over the next few months. So much of his college career and the position he's put in going into the pros is going to be reliant on 2021. How do you perform in 2021? If he comes out and has a slow couple of months and then picks it up late, that's really going to cost him a lot of money. That's a lot of pressure to put in the kid's shoulders going into, potentially one of the biggest years of his life,
right?
In terms of that front investment that you get that sort of sets you up.
Here's a good example. So we'll dive into the outfielders in just a second here, but Zack Deloach, I know he's a Seattle pick, but I think his track record is the perfect example here. Comes in as a freshman. He hits like 211. Comes out as a sophomore. Hits like 194. Goes to the Cape. Just beats the hell out of the ball. Puts his name on the map. All of a sudden, all right, maybe this kid, swing looks different. Maybe he's a top 50 guy. Keeps doing it at A&M. Well, he breaks into the damn near the top 40. And I'll tell you what, had he not had the Cape Cod League, there's no way Zack Deloach is a top 3 rounds pick. I don't think there's any way.
No, I think you're spot on with that. There's really not a whole lot of debate there. All right, let's talk about some of these outfielders here, and then we'll wrap it up. We'll save pitching for the next show.
Sure.
We've already mentioned a few of them. We've mentioned Judd Fabian. I think we've talked about Colton Cowser. We certainly can jump into him as well. Ethan Wilson, I know that we've covered. Christian Franklin, we've mentioned. Sal Frelick, we've talked about. But right there at the top, I mean, you have 5 incredibly talented outfielders that, Wilson is more of a bat first guy, but I think, with Fabian, Cowser, Franklin, and Frelick, there's defensive value as well. There's all around value. And you don't necessarily see that from year to year with a college class, that they're going to have this many guys that go in the first round that are all, outfielders that could be starting major league outfielders.
Yeah, it's a strong college outfield class. It's a fairly, for right now, it's a fairly weak college infield class. So with the exception of Matt McClain there at the top, who, even like you said, still a bit of a divisive profile. There's not anybody that really stands out on the infield. No, I think the college outfield class is not, it's not amazing, but it is solid at the top. Those 5 guys that you just talked about really stand out. And then there's a 6th guy for me that I think could certainly play his way into the discussion of being in the, in the first round, and that's Levi Usher, another Louisville kid. Man, Louisville, they are stacked. They're going to be pretty good again. It's really a shame that the season got canceled, because they would have been a fun one to watch in Omaha. But
yeah,
Usher's a kid that he was JUCO kid, made his debut last year, or this past year at Louisville. He hit 411, 484, and 571 with a couple of home runs. He's a quick twitch, another comfortable, balanced hitter at the plate. He's probably a below average power guy. I don't think he's going to be a guy that taps into a whole lot of power at the next level, but you're talking at least plus speed, maybe 70 grade arm, and certainly, the instincts and the intangibles to stick in center field. So, you go out and you hit 411, 484. If you do that in consecutive years, he's the type of guy that can sneak into that 20 range and make a name for himself as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. He's one of my more favorite outfield prospects actually in this draft as well. So totally agree with you there. I think he's an interesting guy that could move up a ton. And we talked about him prior to the show. Any other names that you wanted to sort of dig in on here? Let's say from sort of outside that top 5, because I know we're going to be beating the Wilson, Franklin, Frelick sort of group to death. And Fabian, I feel like I've been talking about now for 2 years. So,
well, yeah, Judd Fabian's your guy. The only guy that I want to talk about, and I totally understand if you don't have a ton of exposure to him, is Max Marusak from Texas Tech.
Marusak was actually the guy that I was going to bring up. I watch a fair amount of Texas Tech, as I do have the Fox College Sports Southeast package. So I go Texas Tech and Grand Canyon University games.
I like him, man. I really like Marusak. He is, if he's not the fastest player in this class, he's going to be really close. He kind of has that Braden Ward profile from this last year. My thoughts on him: he's definitely going to stay in center field, and he's got an arm that is going to ultimately probably end up being an asset for him out there. So he can play any position if he needs to. Here's the thing that I think is a bit of a hot take on Marusak. I think he's got 50 grade raw power. I do. I think the frame suggests that he could tap into, 16 to 18 home runs at the next level. The swing is a mess. It's a mess. It's slappy. It's flat. But he's got such a big build. I mean, the guy's like 190 pounds in a 5'10" frame. And I just want to see him engage his lower half a little bit, because if he did, and I understand you're kind of taking away a little bit of the hit tool here, if he engages his lower half, you might be looking at a guy that could hit, 310, 330 in college and wind up running into 8 home runs at Texas Tech. And that gets you in the first round when you're an 80 runner.
So he hit really poorly down the Cape last year. He had 22 games with Harwich. I wanted to mention this. He was one of the fastest players I saw down the Cape. That includes Braden Ward that you had mentioned earlier, Derek Baker, and a handful of other guys that are, double plus type speedsters. And I mean, he did not make a lot of good contact, but batting practice, he'll put the ball over the fence. He'll put a charge into a ball, especially to his pull side. He'll drive some stuff right back up with the pitcher. I think there's a little sneaky pop in there as well. If you told me he had average major league power at maturation, it wouldn't be a shock to me. That's a really interesting player. Obviously a different build from Garrett Mitchell, but in terms of what you're looking at and what you're dreaming on, you don't think the power is probably as big as Mitchell, but it's some of the same concerns. This is a guy that has some production. He's incredibly fast, incredibly athletic. You have a strong up the middle defensive profile, obviously as a center fielder. It's just, can he make the tweaks to his setup? His hands, I think, is a big part of it, so he can get to all that raw power that he will show in batting practice. If he gets to that point, then we're talking about a guy that could push just like an AJ Pollock type, everyday center fielder,
right.
All-star. And I'm talking about AJ Pollock when all of his ligaments are together.
All of his elbows aren't shattered.
And his knees.
Like an Adam Eaton.
Exactly. Like an Adam Eaton. I think, like an Adam Eaton, maybe with a little bit more, maybe with a little more juice. Like maybe it's more like Trey Turner because of the speed, Yeah. But I don't want to put that sort of a lofty comp on a kid. But I think that that's what we're looking at when we see this kid. We see the athleticism. We see what he does in the field. We see how fast he is. And we see some of the raw sort of violence in that batting practice swing. If he can tap into more of that in the game, change the setup a little bit, like I said, tap into some of that pull side power, even if it's, more like 30 doubles and 15 homers, I think he could be a really exciting player at the next level. But he will be, I think he's going to be a day one guy just simply because of all those intangibles and the fact that he does have a surefire defensive position with value with that glove, that even as a fourth outfielder, a team probably feels like the floor is relatively high. Anybody else here you wanted to jump in on? We're going close to an hour. I know I never like to go too far over an hour with these things. We got a lot of hours to go through over the next, 12 months.
No, not really. Just, your weekly reminder that Parker Chavers is hanging out at Coastal Carolina, and he's going to be a really strong draft pick for whoever selects him.
All right. I can't wait till that shoulder is fully healed and he's
Amen.
back in the Parker Chavers of old.
Yes, sir.
Some team gets a really talented player. So that's a good reminder. We'll do one like that at the end of every single show. Joe, thanks for joining me. Big shot to our guest, Ian Moller, one of the top players in this 2021 draft class. Ian was an incredible interview. Thanks to his dad as well, who's a big fan of the show, big fan of the site. We love it when these families support our content because we want to support your players and your kids as well. And all of the readers out there, we hope you enjoy what we're bringing to you on a weekly basis, getting you prepped up 11 months early for the 2021 MLB Draft. Thanks again.